She said, if you really cared about our future, you'd stop questioning my spending and just trust me with the money. That sentence landed harder than she probably intended. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was final in a way that told me where I stood. We were sitting at the small kitchen table, the one we bought together when we moved in, bills spread out between us like homework we hadn't studied for. We'd been living together for 3 years. Same routines, same shared accounts, same understanding that big decisions were discussed, not announced. Or at least that's what I thought. The conversation started because our checking account was lower than it should have been. Not empty, just off. Enough that I noticed, enough that it didn't add up with what we both earned. I asked a simple question. Did something big come out this month? She didn't answer right away. She kept scrolling on her phone, thumb moving faster than normal. That was when the second problem surfaced. Not all at once, but enough to change the temperature in the room. She said she'd been covering some things. Work stuff, personal stuff, nothing to worry about. Then she followed it with that line about trust, like the issue was my curiosity, not the missing money. I let it sit for a second. Then I asked how much. She sighed like I was exhausting her, told me it wasn't a big deal and that she didn't keep exact numbers. That was new. We always kept numbers. We tracked everything. That was the deal when we combined finances. When I pressed again, she finally told me she'd put some expenses on a credit card, then another, then admitted she'd been moving balances around. Not gambling, not drugs, just spending she didn't want to explain in real time. She said it like that made it fine. I asked how long this had been going on. She shrugged. Months, maybe longer. That was when I realized the ultimatum wasn't just about money, it was about control. She wanted the freedom to make unilateral decisions with shared resources, and she wanted me silent about it. I told her I wasn't accusing her of anything. I just needed transparency if we were going to keep building together. She laughed. Not a big laugh. A short one. Like I'd said something naive. She said I was acting like her father. Said she didn't need permission. Said relationships weren't spreadsheets. Then she reminded me casually that my income was steadier than hers. That I could absorb fluctuations better. That if I loved her, I'd stop making it an issue. There it was. Financial pressure wrapped in a loyalty test. I asked to see the balances. She said no. That was the first clear boundary crossed. Shared finances without shared visibility. The second came right after. She told me that if I kept pushing, she'd handle money separately, and I could figure out my own stuff. That sounded reasonable on the surface. Until you remember all the bills were already intertwined. Rent, utilities, subscriptions, insurance, all in both our names, all relying on coordination. I pointed that out. She told me I was being dramatic. Over the next week, I tried to approach it calmly. I asked for a sit-down. I suggested a reset. She agreed, then canceled twice. When we did talk, she minimized everything. Said the balances were temporary. Said her next bonus would cover it. Said I needed to relax. But the numbers kept slipping. I started pulling statements. Not secretly, just carefully. The spending wasn't catastrophic, but it was consistent. Online orders, services, charges she'd never mentioned, and late fees, more than one. When I brought up the late fees, she got defensive. Said they were her business, said I didn't get to audit her. That word stuck with me. Audit. As if accountability was an attack. One night she came home irritated and told me her card had been declined at dinner with coworkers. She said it like it was my fault. Like my questions had somehow caused it. She asked me to transfer money so she wouldn't look stupid the next time. I asked if she'd show me the full picture first. She stared at me and said, I'm not going to live like this. Either you trust me or we need to rethink things. That was the ultimatum again. Cleaner this time. I went to bed without responding. Not to punish her, I just needed quiet. Lying there, I realized something uncomfortable. This wasn't about a rough patch. It wasn't about stress. It was about expectations that had shifted without my consent. She expected access, coverage, and silence. I expected partnership. Those expectations don't coexist for long. By the end of that week, I stopped trying to fix it. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood what I was being asked to accept. and I wasn't going to argue my way into respect. Update 1. She doubled down the next time we talked. Not louder, just firmer. She said she felt monitored, said my questions made her anxious, said she didn't want to feel like she needed approval to live her life. None of that addressed the actual problem, but it reframed me as the issue. I asked one last time to sit down with all the accounts open. No accusations, just numbers. She crossed her arms and said, "I'm not doing that. I've already explained myself." Then she added something that changed how I heard everything after. She said, "You make more than me. This isn't going to ruin us unless you let it." That was the moment I understood the structure. My income was the buffer. Her spending was the variable. My role was to absorb the difference quietly. I didn't argue. I just nodded and told her I needed a day to think. That night, I made a list. Every shared bill, every account with both our names on it, every automatic payment that depended on my paycheck showing up on time. It was all cleanly documented, which made the next part easier. The following morning, I opened a new checking account in my name only. I redirected my direct deposit. Then I went through each shared expense and canceled or separated what I legally could without drama. Streaming services, subscriptions, small things first. For the bigger bills, I did exactly what we'd always agreed on. I paid my half, clearly labeled, on schedule. Nothing more, nothing less. I didn't announce any of this. I didn't frame it as a punishment. I just stopped being the silent cushion. She noticed within a week. She asked why the grocery account was low. I told her I'd transferred my portion already and that the rest was on her side. She said it was inconvenient. I said it was accurate. Then a utility payment bounced. Not shut off, just flagged. She came to me annoyed, asking if I'd missed it. I showed her the receipt for my half. She stared at it like it was written in another language. That night she accused me of pulling away, said I was acting cold, said this wasn't how partners behave. I told her calmly that this was how boundaries worked, that shared finances required shared visibility, and since that wasn't happening, I was reducing my exposure. She told me I was being petty. I told her I was being precise. The next escalation came fast. Her credit card company called about a missed minimum. Then another. She started getting mail she didn't open right away. She began making comments about stress, about work being slow, about needing support. I listened. I didn't fix. She asked me directly to cover one payment, just this once. Said she'd pay me back after her bonus. I asked to see the balances first. She got quiet, then angry. Said I was using money to control her. I didn't raise my voice. I just said no. That was the clean break. Not emotionally, structurally. Within days, she started rearranging her spending, but too late. Fees stacked. Interest hit. She complained about banks being predatory, about timing being unfair, never about choices. Living together became tense but functional. We didn't fight. We coordinated schedules. We shared space without sharing leverage. I began packing slowly, not in secret, just efficiently. My things, my boxes, my timeline. When she asked where I was going, I told her I'd found a place closer to work. Month to month. Simple. She looked shocked, like the possibility hadn't occurred to her. By the end of that month, the first real consequence landed. She was denied an increase on her credit limit, the one she'd been counting on to float the next cycle. She told me about it like it was gossip. I nodded, wished her luck, and went back to taping boxes. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished, and the systems she'd relied on were starting to notice. Final update. I moved out on a Tuesday morning. No scene, no speech. I loaded my car, returned my keys to the counter, and left a note with the final utility payment receipt attached. Exactly my share. Exactly on time. She didn't try to stop me. At first, nothing dramatic happened. That's what made it feel heavier. Life kept moving, just without my income smoothing the edges. Within 2 weeks, she missed another minimum payment. This time, the card issuer reduced her limit instead of increasing it. She complained to mutual friends that banks were tightening up. No one argued. Then her rent portion hit late. Not unpaid, just late. Enough to trigger a reminder email, enough to add a fee, enough to make patterns visible. I wasn't involved, but I still heard about it. Our circles overlapped. People talked. She started selling small things online, then bigger ones. Furniture we'd bought together but I'd left behind. She framed it as downsizing. Her work hours didn't change. Her income didn't improve. What changed was the margin she'd always assumed would exist. A month after I left, she asked if we could talk. I agreed in public for 10 minutes. She didn't apologize. She said she hadn't realized how dependent things had become. She said she felt blindsided by how fast everything tightened up. She asked if I'd consider helping her stabilize until she got back on track. I told her I hoped she did get back on track. Then I told her no. I didn't explain further. I didn't justify it. That was the last real conversation we had. After that, the consequences stacked quietly. A subscription she'd forgotten about overdrew her account. A late utility payment required a deposit. Her credit score dipped just enough to affect a car refinance she'd been counting on. None of it was catastrophic. That was the point. It was just friction, constant, compounding friction without a buffer. I stayed out of it. I paid my new rent. I slept better. My account stayed boring. Every now and then, someone would mention her struggling. Not dramatically, just comments about stress, about money being tight, about lessons learned. I never corrected the story. From a distance, I could see it clearly. She hadn't lost a partner. She'd lost a system, and systems don't argue or negotiate. They just stop working when you misuse them. I didn't feel victorious. I felt accurate. There was no revenge, just a refusal to keep absorbing consequences that weren't mine. The last thing I heard was that she'd taken on a roommate, someone temporary, someone to help with costs. I hoped it worked out. I closed that chapter without ceremony. No lingering ties, no open tabs, just clean numbers, quiet nights, and the relief of finally stepping out of a role I never agreed to play.